Yo Dan, looks like the Montech stuff showed up? Yes sir, they sent out their new King 45 PC case, their Century II PSU, and their HyperFlow Digital 360mm AIO. Let's get into it. So we'll go ahead and start it off with the King 45 PC case, and just for clarification, this is the King 45 Pro, which comes with 4 pre-installed fans, and there is a King 45, the non-Pro version, which does not come with any pre-installed fans. And both are available in black and in white. And then we have the black King 45 Pro here. So taking a look at the exterior, we've got a side glass panel, which has a slight tint to it, and same with the front. And then we've got a little bit of a curve right here on this front glass. And then we have an RGB strip that continues along the front and then ends right here. And then we have that signature Montech top panel that they've used on a few cases before, which I think looks pretty cool. And we have a pretty generous IO down here, power button, reset, combo audio jack, 2 USB type A and a type C. And then we've got all mesh on the top right here. And then taking a look at the back panel, we've got mesh over here because our power supply is actually going to sit in this top left corner. And then we've got solid over here. Then here is the rear. We do have an extension right here, which I'll talk about later, but our power supply power cable is going to plug into here. We've got ventilation for our rear fan. Our motherboard is going to sit right here. We've got our PCIe slot covers. And then we have a pretty decent elevated base in the front. You can see there's a little gap down here, but if we take a look at the back, we have a really large opening. And the reason they did this is because the bottom fans are actually angled. So they left this really large opening down here to get fresh air into our bottom fans. And then there is a dust filter right here, which is probably going to be kind of hard to see, but there is a removable dust filter down there. Clean looking case though, but let's go ahead, take off the panels and then start looking at the inside. So all of the panels on the King 45 PC case are toolless removal. There's no screws holding any of the panels in, and all of them just pop off with no need for a screwdriver, which is nice to see. Makes it nice and easy. And like I said earlier, this is the Pro version of the King 45, so we have 4 pre-installed fans. We have 3 RX 120 Pros at the bottom, so these are reverse blade, so they are intake, and they are angled, which I think looks better. And then most case manufacturers are starting to go this route because they say it's better for GPU cooling. And then we have an AX 120 Pro on the rear, and this is 120 millimeters. This is regular blade, so this is exhaust. And then as far as fan support, you can fit up to 3 120s at the bottom, a 120 or a 140 on the rear, and then up to 3 120s on the top. And then as far as radiator support, you can fit up to a 360 millimeter on the top or a 120 millimeter on the rear. Then as far as motherboard support, you can fit up to ATX motherboards and also back connect ATX motherboards, although the owner's manual for the case doesn't mention anything about back connect, but we have all those cutouts going around, so I assume that it is back connect capable. And then we've got a built-in GPU sag bracket. We've got a Montech badge over here. So it looks like we have a lot of options for builds in this case. Let's go ahead and take a look at the rear. We have this bracket right here for drives, and it's held in with 1 captive screw. So if we loosen this, we can swing this out, and then you just pop it up, and then it just basically sits on these hinges over here. And then here is how the back looks. Got a lot of cables. We got a very interesting fan controller placement, which should make cable management probably a bit tricky, but we'll see how it goes. But it doesn't really look like they had many options for placements, so they put it at the top. So that's interesting. Then our power supply is going to sit in this top left corner, and then we're going to plug this extension cable into the top of it. So all of our cables are going to come downward, and then this extension cable comes back here, and your power supply power cable is going to plug into right here. It looks like we have some tie down spots. We don't really have any Velcro strips pre-installed, but looks like cable management is going to be a little bit tricky, but I'll report back later. You guys know how OCD I am with my cable management, so we'll see how that goes. And then we've got the adjustment for our GPU sag bracket down here. We've got one screw, then we can adjust it up and down. And they also made the I/O cables very long. So once again, cable management might be tricky, and I wish Montech would kind of clean up how many cables are on their cases. I think the King 95 Pro also had quite a few cables. I had to manage like 20 different fan cables, both PWM and 5-volt ARGB. So this one's looking, it might be kind of the same, but it'll put my skills to the test. So we'll see how it goes. But it looks like we do have plenty of room for cable management. It is deep enough, it seems like, to fit all of our cables. So once again, I'll report back how that goes towards the end. But overall, a decent looking case. Should be easy to build in. But let's go ahead and take a look at the power supply next. So the Montech Century II PSU is available in 850 watts, 1050 watts, and one we don't have here, 1200 watts. And they're all ATX 3.1, they're all cybernetics platinum and 80 plus gold. And it is a good looking power supply, and it is fully modular. And we do have the dedicated 12 volt 2x6 port, which is awesome for NVIDIA GPUs. And I think the biggest selling point for these power supplies is going to be the price. So the 850 is $90, the 1050 watt is $110, and the 1200 watt is $160. So a fantastic value, especially for ATX 3.1 and 80 plus gold. Then the cables themselves are nothing special, but for the price point, they aren't bad at all. They are nice and flexible. And I think even first-time PC builders shouldn't have an issue with these cables, but overall, a fantastic value for this type of PSU. And lastly, we've got the HyperFlow Digital 360, and I don't have official pricing yet, but I saw on Amazon it's $120 USD. So for a 360 millimeter AIO with a digital screen, $120 isn't bad at all, especially compared to others on the market. And it's available in multiple different sizes, and it comes pre-installed with their E28 fans. And we've got a pump that goes up to 3,100 RPM, and it will fit the majority of AMD and Intel sockets out there. We've got pre-applied thermal paste. And then as far as the screen, I don't want it to get damaged during the installation process because you never know what's going to happen. So we'll have to see how it looks once the build's all done. But on that note, guys, let's go ahead and jump into the build. All right, guys, so the build is all done and it came out looking fantastic. I really like the end result, and those RGB fans are definitely shining through those tinted panels and they look great. And then we've got the RGB strip over here that is matching all of the colors of the fans. And I made an on-screen correction earlier, but when I was talking about the I/O before, I said that this was a reset button, but it's actually the RGB button for all the devices connected to the fan controller. So if I click it, you can see we can cycle through a bunch of different colors and styles as well. But the cool thing is you can hold it down. Then once you hold it down long enough, it blinks, and then it goes to what I told the RGB software to do. So I set them all to true white. So by holding down that button, it kind of bypassed it. And then now I'm using my RGB software. So that's pretty cool. You can kind of change it on the fly if you want, and you don't have to, you pretty much don't need RGB software. You could just go off that, but I decided to use my RGB software to make a true white, which I pretty much like for all of my builds. But guys, the build looks great. And if we take a quick peek at the back, you can see our power supply is going to get a ton of air. So air is going to go into the PSU fan, and it's actually going to exhaust out of the top. Then you can see that really large opening right here, so our bottom fans can get a bunch of fresh air. But let's go ahead and take off the panels and then look at the inside. So the build consists of a Ryzen 7800 X3D, and then now we can see the screen for the HyperFlow Digital 360. And it's a very simple cooler. There is a piece of software that you download with it. And in the software, you can change it from CPU to GPU temp, and then you can change it from Fahrenheit to Celsius, or you can turn it off completely. So really simple, kind of set it and forget it type thing. And the readout is really easy to read, so that's cool. And it does shine well through the tinted glass, and just a very sleek and nice looking cooler. And I did swap out the E28 fans up top, the included ones on the cooler. I ended up going with the AX120 Pros, which is the same one that's on the rear, so we can have all matching fans all the way around. Because I am very particular with my builds, if you've seen any of mine before, and I almost have to have matching fans going all the way around, just for my OCD-ness. So cool looking build. And then we've got a Gigabyte Aorus B850. We've got 32 gigabytes of Team Group T Create RAM. We've got a 2 terabyte NVMe, and I believe it's WD Black, but now I'm forgetting, so I might have to correct that. Then we've got a Gigabyte 4080 Super. And the sag bracket is working really well. You can see our GPU is perfectly level. And there's just that one screw in back, and then it's just barely supporting the GPU on this side, which is all you really need for GPU, because this is a very rigid heatsink, so you just need support on this side, and it's not interfering with this far right fan either. So the support bracket is working great. And then I'm still unsure of just this whole blank piece right here. Like, I know this is the PSU shroud, but at the same time, I also feel like something's missing. But at the same time, it also doesn't look bad. Then the angled bottom fans do look really cool in my opinion. You can see more of the fans, and then should be better for GPU temps. Then let's go ahead and take a look at the back and make sure this doesn't come unplugged. Let me get some slack on this cable really quick so this doesn't come undone. There we go. Okay, so here is the back, and here is the PSU. Great looking PSU. Really nice to see ATX 3.1 and being gold rated. 80 plus gold is really nice, and this is the 850 watt. And for 90 bucks, and you get a dedicated 12 volt 2x6 cable, definitely a nice PSU for a great value. And the cables, like I said, are nothing special, but for the price point, they're definitely fine. Like, I wasn't expecting custom braided ones, but they're easy to deal with and they look all right. And then most of our cable management is hidden, but if we take off this captive screw and swing this open, It's okay, but with the amount of cables in this case, it's almost nearly impossible to make this look clean. That's one thing about some of these Montech cases I've done. There's just so many cables. And the location of the fan controller, I'm not the biggest fan of, no pun intended. So it's just really hard to keep everything clean. And I could have made it so they were all hidden behind here, but I just kind of said screw it and just left it as is. So not up to the Dancam standards, but honestly, this is probably the best that I'm gonna get it. And I unfortunately did run into an issue when I finished the build. I powered it on and I wasn't getting any power. So I actually swapped the PSU first and that didn't fix it. Then I thought it might be the front panel connection and that didn't fix it. I tried to jump the pins to boot it up and that didn't work. And then it turns out the extension cable that came with the case, which is this one right here, is defective. So this was not working and I did have a known good one on hand. So I ended up going with that and then now it's working. So I told Montech about it and hopefully if there's other units out there that are defective, which is probably very unlikely, hopefully they can catch it in time. But if you're planning on going with this case, just make sure you buy it from a reputable source. So if anything does happen, you can just go ahead and return it and get another one. So that was kind of unfortunate. It took me about 10 minutes of diagnosing it to figure it out. But that kind of stuff unfortunately does happen. I've had dead motherboards before. I've even had a dead GPU. So that does happen. It's not the end of the world. But as far as hooking, actually, I was going to close this. But as far as getting everything together, not bad. Everything's right out in the open. Everything kind of connects to the controller and then the controller connects to the motherboard. But it's just kind of a spaghetti mess, which for 97% of people, it's not going to matter. But for the 3% like me that are very, very picky on their cable management and making it look as good as possible, it's kind of a bummer. But no one really cares about the back. That's just kind of a me thing and maybe a couple people that watch my videos. So that's unfortunately kind of a bummer, but it is what it is because pretty much everyone is just going to care about the front of the build and the front of the build does look great. So the case, super easy to build in. I think it looks great. Did run into that defective cable, which was unfortunate, but like I said, it does happen and that's why warranties exist. That's why you can return things. So I was able to figure it out and get past it for this video, but it's kind of unfortunate. Cooler, great value, looks great, does a great job with cooling as well. I ran a stress test on the 7800X3D and the max temperature I saw was 77 degrees Celsius. So the cooler works great, great price. Screen is very basic, but at the same time does its job just fine. And definitely a great price point compared to others. And it looks clean, just a nice black look, which for me is great because I've used the HyperFlow silent 360s before, the ones that don't have screens. I use those in my builds all the time. And this one's just as good, and now we've got a screen on it. So cool case, nice cooler, good PSU. So I definitely would recommend all three. The case, if you don't care about cable management, I would say go for it. But if you're a cable management nut, then maybe swap out the included fans for ones that you can make a little bit cleaner. But that might just be me. But let me know down in the comments if you're as crazy as I am with cable management. But that's going to do it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, please like, comment, and share with your friends. And subscribe if you enjoy my content. And I'll see y'all in the next video.